Hi and welcome to the channel, Budget Audio Review and Upgrades. Today I'll be continuing this Newbie 6P1 amplifier. This is my final conclusion. My review of the amplifier will come at the end of this. Just going to touch on a few little bits and pieces before that. I may come back to this at a later date. Still a couple more things you could do probably, but I'll leave that till quite a while time because it's took up a lot of my time recently. Now to my regular followers and subscribers who click on all my videos, or most of my videos anyway, I will be putting up a few more music demo sound test videos on different amplifiers I've got around me at the moment, and also do a review on them. Some of them I've already done a review on, some I haven't, so I'll put that music test up. Not many people look at it, to be honest with you, but it's not going to take me long to do it. Just swap over amplifier and speakers and cut it and paste it and put it up on YouTube. It may help someone somewhere who's looking for something to give an idea, maybe how it sounds. Obviously, going through the recording equipment I've got and YouTube, etc., it may give a little bit of a representation of how it sounds compared maybe with another unit. You may be hearing more bass on one, for etc., than you can on the other. A bit more detail, maybe something like that. Anyway, hopefully it helps someone somewhere. Like I say, it's not costing me anything to do. Right, back to this Newbie 6P1 amplifier. Now, before I carry on anymore, just a few things I want to say. If I turn it round, at the back here you've got the speakers. It's got 4 ohms and 8 ohm speakers. They are both connected up inside, so they're both connected. So if you've got a set of 4 ohm speakers, you can connect it, and the 8 ohm speakers you can connect it on separate taps. I know a couple of places have said that their one weren't connected, the 4 ohms wasn't connected, but on my particular unit it is connected to 4 ohms. So just check that maybe with the unit you get. You may or may not be connected on that tap, so just bear that in mind as well. You can never tell really, I suppose. Also, this has got the headphone socket on the front. This is a 1/4 inch jack. They give you this adapter with it that converts it to a 3.5mm jack, and that plugs in there. And to operate this, you just flick this little switch here, which toggles between speakers in the up position and headphones in the down position. So that toggles between headphones and the speakers. And while it's on headphones, I see they've got connected, I think it's a 10 microfarad capacitor going to this, and it's probably a cheap capacitor, so it's something maybe you may want to upgrade in the future if you're using headphones. So the headphones sounded pretty good to me, they sounded okay, but you may want to just upgrade that 10 microfarad capacitor to a better one, a more of a one in the audio line, just to give it a little bit more clarity, maybe a little bit of a sound difference. Something to bear in mind maybe, because like I say, the ones that they're using there are probably as cheap as possible, to make it all as cheap as possible. What I've done here, I bought some extra valves, as you can see here. Come with the stock tubes. I've worn them in for about 50 hours, something like that, and I've worn these extra, these add-on valves, these new valves, shall we say, new old stock valves from Ukraine and Russia and places like that. I've also worn these in for about 50 hours as well. I'm not too sure what's in this box actually. Oh, it's the little preamp valve. But yeah, I've got some of these as well, and I've kind of like rolled from the stock to the new ones that I bought, and I didn't pay a lot for these. These preamp ones, I think I paid about £6 each for. These are new old stock from Ukraine. Maybe a bit difficult to get them valves now from Ukraine itself. But there's plenty of other places selling them. I did buy, I bought the rectifier valve from Italy, even though it was Russian old stock. I bought that from Italy, so that you can still get hold of these places, even in the UK. Some places have still got these Russian valves in stock. With the actual main output valves here, these 4 here, the 6P ones, I bought some from Ukraine. If I just open it up, I'm going to put a little picture on the screen there now, and you can see I've actually got these matched. These are matched pairs. They're all the same values, like I think it's, I don't know what it actually says, but whether they are, it says there, both channels are exactly the same. So they're matched up. These are the old ones that come with it, the you know, kind of stock valves you would get when buying the unit. I've replaced it with the ones that are matched up. Now the reason for that is that obviously they're matched. Well, they're supposed to be matched by the seller anyway. Well, I'll take it at face value. They are matched. It seems a reputable seller. So they are matched, rather than these ones here that may be just like a cheaper valve. They may be a bit of a mix match game wise, all that kind of stuff. At least you know with these are perfectly matched. so you should get a little bit better sound or more balanced sound out of it anyway. Same with these these preamp tubes as well. And like I say, I changed the rectifier. Now I did do a few bit of experiments, a few swapping around with the valves, and I found that these new valves, these new old stock valves that I bought in myself, like I say, they weren't expensive, sounded just a tad better. There wasn't a vast amount of difference, but they were a tad better than the stock valves. Looking at forums, etc., and other people comments on this amplifier and other amplifiers saying they swapped the stock tubes for some new ones they bought. And a lot of people say, well, I say a lot of people, I haven't really counted to be honest with you, but some people say, you know, it's a big difference, it's opened it up more detail, etc. You know, it's quite a big difference. And some people say there wasn't much of a difference. And in my case, there wasn't much of a difference. It's a tad difference. It was, you know, it's a tad more detail, a tad little bit more openness, a little bit more airiness to it, and overall just a little bit better sounding, I thought, with these valves here, these valves that I swapped over or rolled or whatever you want to call it. And this could be the case that the valves I got with it were pretty good. They weren't too bad in the first instance, and these other valves are just a tad better. It could be the case that these ain't very good valves, and the ones I've got are not that particularly good neither. But to all fairness, it sounds, you know, it sounds okay to me. It doesn't sound rubbish. You know, it sounds fairly good. So yeah, so I'll take it. You know, the ones you got with it weren't too shabby in the first place. But like anything else with this, you can pay more than I've paid for these replacement or new old stock valves. I'll pay £10 for some of them. You can probably get valves that are £20, £30, like the rectifier valve. I've seen some of these quite expensive, £80, £100, that kind of thing, where my one was about £7 or £8, I think, somewhere around there. So of course, you know, the more you pay, the more you want to put into it, you're probably going to get a little bit more better sound out of it. That's the only point I'm trying to make. But I kind of kept it at a reasonable kind of budget, a low budget still on the upgrade. I didn't want to put too much more into it, but I just wanted to experiment a little, maybe. That's the same. I've replaced the capacitors as in Skunky Design Electronics recommendation. You know, just a way she's did it to improve the sound. I've gone along with them upgrades, and the upgrades I've done to this, I've done the power supply, which I'll put a link to the video of me actually doing my power supply and showing you what I did with my particular power supply. So it works on the UK voltage without any step down transformers, without it getting too hot, without the valves, too much voltage getting to the plate of the valves, and the heaters running the correct voltage. I'll leave a video for that for you to look at. You may want to do them changes yourself, but be very careful if you're new to this. I'm not too confident that some my voltages here, and it could result in death, worst case scenario. So yes, so be very careful. Even I'm careful when opening up stuff like this, compared to maybe just a normal receiver, because there's so many high voltages pretty much all over the circuit. Right, so I've done the power supply. Also, I've changed the capacitors, the coupling capacitors in this unit, and a few other capacitors to audio grade ones, and the coupling capacitors not so much so. They're just I should imagine a little bit better than the stock ones. I did kind of listen to it obviously, but the stock ones and the stock tubes. And then I changed the capacitors, still using the stock tubes, and it's, you know, it's a little bit more detail to it. There was a difference. It wasn't vast again, but there was a little bit of difference, and that was worth doing. I've also changed a couple of resistors in here as well. One's been moved on each side. If we just split it down the middle, channel for channel. So on one channel, one resistor's been moved, and a couple more added to that channel, and the same with the other channel, as Skunky Design Electronics kind of recommends to get the bias on the preamp, I think it is. I'll leave a link to that video where she does that. I'm not going to, I'll show you a picture of the screen how mine looks now with these changes, and as you can see with the red arrows, that's all the capacitors I've changed. The blue arrows there show the two new resistors I put in, and I think it's the orange arrows show where I've moved the resistor, but that's all explained in the link below from Skunky Design Electronics. No reason for me to do it again, really. I didn't come up with it, so I'll let you go over there if you want to have a look at that and see how that was done. So I've done that myself, and so going back to these capacitors in here, I've changed these coupling capacitors. My ones were only about £1, £1.50 each, something like that. Of course, you can get dearer ones. They do these paper ones, these oil ones, all in oil and all that kind of stuff, and they could be quite expensive. I've seen some for £80, and they range between probably £20 to £80, and you probably go further than that if you wanted to, and they're quite chunky. So I'd take it if you got them instead of the ones I've put in, you're going to get a little bit more detail, you're going to get a little bit better sounding unit, so it may be worth the extra investment. But take into account that you bought the unit for £300. If you start buying all these extras, you're probably going to put half extra again, or maybe a little bit more, into it again. Before you know it, this has cost you £400 or £500 all of a sudden, and that is way over budget for this channel. It may not be for you, but for this particular channel, it's way over budget. Keep my stuff below £200. In fact, everything on the channel is below £200 apart from this. Most of the stuff is actually £100 or less. I'm trying to get something reasonable sounding, something quite nice sounding for as little as possible, so you can start up as a newbie or someone that hasn't got a lot of money to spend. Get yourself a nice little system rather than going down a local shop, say a brand new system made out of cheap old plastic for £199, little pair of stinky speakers, hardly any sound to them, so it doesn't sound that great at all. Where if you buy something, say for £199, second hand, old stuff, vintage stuff or older stuff, speakers, amplifier and everything, you can get a much better sounding unit for the same money. That's the idea really. I will eventually put a little unit together, some bits I've got or recommendations maybe for a cheapest possible unit, maybe something like that. I may not have all the bits here, but maybe bits I've had in the past I can recommend as well. Anyway, I'll leave that, I'll come back to that another day maybe. Okay, so now I'm going to go to, after doing all these adjustments, how this actually sounds. Right, so how does it actually sound? Maybe I should say what I was expecting it to sound like and comparing it to what it actually sounds like. Maybe another way of doing it, I think, in this particular case. Reading things on the internet about valve sound, etc. My impression, I may have got this wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression was that maybe the valve hasn't got a lot of bottom end, there's a little bit shy in the bottom end. I was hoping the top end to be quite a bit of top end, to be honest with you. I was expecting this to be quite an airy, quite an open, and quite a big, massive kind of sound stage to it. I mean, it's going to go beyond the speakers, it's going to be quite high, it's going to have quite a lot of depth to it. Vocals are going to sound nice and smooth, going to sound really nice, different from a normal solid state amplifier, especially one of my budget amplifiers anyway. Even though this was a budget, bottom of the range unit, because obviously £300 apparently isn't a lot of money. It's very cheap for, pardon me, a valve amplifier, a brand new valve amplifier made. Maybe you get a second hand one, you may be lucky on eBay that something was £1,000 before. Not many people bidding on it, something like that. You may get lucky and pick up one for £200 or £300. You may do, you may not. But yeah, for a new one, built, quite a bit to it, I suppose. Some people have actually written down that it costs you more to build it yourself, to actually get the parts and ready made from China, which may or may not be the case. I can't verify that because it's hard to say exactly how many these bits and pieces cost. But I think, these meters ain't dear, these transformer sets ain't dear, the parts inside the case, I should imagine you could build it using cheap parts, obviously, for less than the £300 I paid for it, but I could be wrong. But anyway, we're not going to go there. We're going to go, like I say, to the sound. I'm expecting this big open sound stage, quite airy, and that kind of valve sound. I want to try and kind of discover what the difference is between a solid state and valve sound. When these amplifiers I've got, these Sansui and other amplifiers, when they you read the reviews on them and that from people who's got it, saying it's a tube kind of sound to it. So I wanted to try and know what a tube sound actually sounds like. Some people say that the tube sounds quite warm, but then again, it obviously depends on what tubes you're using. There's all different tubes, EL84s, is it the B300 valve, these 6P ones, they've all got different characteristics to them and different sounding, and even replacing these with exactly the same ones made by different companies, more expensive ones, will give a different sound to the unit as well. So it's quite a lot of experimenting, a bit like swapping these valves. I would say is maybe just like moving the bass and treble around just a tad either way. So you may be just changing the signature openness and that kind of thing by changing these valves rather than twiddling around with the knobs on the front just a tad. Okay, so yes, I was a bit disappointed, to be honest with you, on face value, because like I say, I turned this on obviously listened to quite a few different tracks, etc. And I was expecting this really big kind of sound stage, bigger than the sound stages that I've got with my amplifiers. A lot of airiness to it, a lot of openness to it, and I didn't really find that, to be honest with you. This unit, if we start off with the sound stage, it never really went beyond the speakers. It stayed in between the speakers. But what was in between the speakers did sound nice. You know, I say sound nice. The sound stage, you know, the instrument placement, that sounded, it sounded quite nice. It was quite focused in that where the instruments are. In fact, it was really focused. And the way to try and explain this, I think, I'm not too sure. I've been reading on the internet that it's like a blackness to the sound. The sound sounds black, and I'm not too sure exactly what that means really myself. Maybe some people can leave a comment down below. But the kind of thing I've got with this amplifier is that if we just take just a few examples here of instruments, and maybe a female singer that's bang centre when you're listening to it, the sweet spot, the singer's ear bang in the centre, and you may have a drummer over here, say, and someone playing the piano here. We'll just go with just three things, make it nice and easy. They seem to have their own space. They've got their own space, but a bit like, a bit different to maybe the transistor amplifiers I got. This space is like, if you can kind of imagine them on a stage maybe, and you've got the floorboard supporting them, and they're all standing there. The bloke's playing the piano. He could be sitting down, obviously, but he's there. The singer's here, standing up, singing into the microphone, singing directly at you, and you've got the bloke over here playing the drums, and he's on the stage. And they're separated. They've got their separation between them, so you can pick them out, and they're not kind of intermingled or anything like that. They're quite focused where they are. But I found out with this, it's kind of, you've got that, but you've just got this added extra where they're more not actually standing on the stage. They're level with the stage, but the stage isn't there. They're kind of suspended there, is how I'd kind of say this sounds. They're kind of like suspended. They've got like a void in between, so they're kind of suspended there. It just gives that impression sound wise. It's a bit hard to explain really, but I just got that impression that there's quite a bit of space around them, and maybe a void between them and the next person in the band, or say for instance, like I say, the bloke on the piano here and the singer. There's a big void, even though they're the same space apart as they would be using a solid state amplifier. They've just got that void in between them. It's just a big void there rather than maybe that stage in between them. So that was kind of like, it's a bit hard to explain, but hopefully you kind of get the drift of what I'm saying there. So that was quite nice. It's something maybe I haven't heard before in that respect, or heard it so clearly in that respect. Probably may have heard it kind of thing, but it stood out more clearer with this valve amplifier. So that sounded nice. That was quite a nice little experience. But the top end of this amplifier, if we go to the top end, it is rolled off the top end. I was expecting it to kind of like, you've got these shimmery instruments and the top end of the cymbal and little brushes and that. I was expecting to all that with quite a lot of clarity and going off into the distance kind of thing, some space, some airiness to it. And that wasn't the case, because the top end was, is pretty much missing nearly. It's quite rolled off that top end. Even though the example I'm going to put up, and I'll put a link at the top of a track playing, you may think, oh, it's got plenty of top end there. It still is missing a bit more. It needs to go a little bit higher. And like I say, that shimmering, that fine brushes and that, it was hard to pick up. And I was expecting more, and to be very, more detailed than the solid state amplifiers I got. I was expecting them brushes near enough to the every single brush kind of thing on the cymbal or something like that, and that wasn't the case. So I was a little bit disappointed with the top end. Though it's okay, it is missing that. It's not too bad, but it is missing that extra bit that maybe I was expecting, but it wasn't going to be there anyway. I was over optimistic maybe. Vocals and that were nice. That kind of mid-range was nice on this amplifier. You've got the piano, which sounded really nice. It sounded quite real, the piano. The strings being hit by the keys, etc., sounded quite nice. The trumpet and the sax, they all sounded quite nice. They're quite nicely sounding instruments, and that's where this kind of focuses, I think, on that mid-range. It just lacked a little bit of body, maybe you could turn around and say, maybe to do with the lack of the bass here, a little bit, the bass being a bit lacking. But It just lacked a little bit of body, but other than that, it sounded quite nice. It had that kind of like little bit, you know, just a tad of luxury to it. Just gives you that kind of luxury kind of sounding kind of like to it. It sounded cool, you know, as real as it could get for what this is, I think. You know what I mean? The detail was nice there, the focus was nice, and it was quite believable. Like, so that was quite nice. You know what I mean? Just had that nice little tone to it that sounded, you know, quite nice, and sounded a little bit better than maybe the solid state amplifiers have got. There weren't a vast amount of difference, but there was a slight difference there, I think. But this just sounded a little bit nicer on the vocals, on the piano, etc. Going down to the bottom end here, the bass, excuse me, the bass was lacking on this unit. You know, the lower notes were lacking. It's a little bit on the muddy side, just a little bit on the muddy side as well, but it wasn't too bad. So you would need, you know, I've got a little set of Wolfdale speakers. On certain amplifiers, you know, they sound quite nice, these Wolfdales, the Diamond 3s, they do sound quite nice. Not, you know, obviously a small little cone, so I'm not going to give a lot of bass out. So obviously paired up with this, the bass was pretty much non-existent, not unless you kind of helped them out, put them on a table or something like that, give them a little bit of help in the bass department. It was lacking, like, you know what I mean, so it made them sound very shrill and thin. Sounding. So yeah, if you're going to match a pair of speakers up this and get a decent sized cone, I would have said, you know, something that's got a bit of bass to it to help it out. So you want to, you know, want a speaker, you know, sounds a little bit on the bassy side maybe to help this out, and there's a little bit on the bright side as well to help out the top end here. So if you've got anything that's not very bright, it's a bit rolled off at the top end speaker wise, and obviously this being a little bit rolled off, you're going to start losing, you know, quite a bit of that top end, and same at the other end. Going towards the bottom end, you'll be losing the bottom end as well. So you need some speakers here to help you out, something a bit easy to drive as well. These are the kind of speakers that are probably going to go nicely to this, some eye sensitivity speakers, something like that. I mean, it's fairly loud. I've had this on, and I just put it on about 1 o'clock. I had the speakers here on my stands, down the other end of the room, and it filled up the room with sound. You know, it's quite loud. You wouldn't really want it much louder than that for this particular room, which is about 3.5 metres by 7 metres. You know, it gives a fair punch, and with them speakers being at B, I wouldn't want it much louder. And you know, it was still nice and controlled. It wasn't getting distorted or anything like that. It still sounded quite, you know, quite nice as well. So that comes now to my conclusion of what do I actually think of this amplifier. Was it worth my £300 nearly outlay? About another £70 on top to get the sound I'm getting. Well, I would say probably not. But it's been an experience. I mean, I've kind of experienced, I've dipped my toe, I would have said, into how valves can sound. And like I say, there's different kind of output valves, different numbers and all that kind of thing. So they're all going to give a different sound. You can start rolling these valves, but it's for someone that don't mind spending, keep on spending kind of thing. It's a thing that you're going to buy one set of valves maybe, and oh, there's another company make one, these are slightly dearer, etc. May change the coupling capacitors in here, that kind of stuff. You could always be tinkering around with it, always dipping your hand in your pocket. You know, that said though, you know, if you're into this and you want to get a valve amp, you're not really interested in anything else, it's something that you can kind of like upgrade as you go along. You can make some slight adjustments to it and slightly upgrade it. There's something you wouldn't be able to do with a normal amplifier. You know, in that case, it's just taking valves in and out. With a normal amplifier, you'd be kind of like doing a lot more than that to try and improve the sound kind of thing. So, and it's quite easy to do valve wise anyway. If you just want to tinker around with the valves, it's going to give you a little bit more. You're not just stuck with one amplifier. You can have a little bit of a tinker around and make some other adjustments maybe, and experiment and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to come at a cost. So for my particular channel, this particular channel, like I say, it's a budget channel, and I'm looking at people on a tight budget. I don't think any of the viewers here on a tight budget is going to run out and get one of these anytime soon. I would probably recommend, if look out for a second-hand valve amplifier that's obviously, if you can't, not too old, just in case you don't get say 50 or 60 year old where you're going to have to start changing the capacitors inside. But something maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years old, something like that, hasn't had a lot of use maybe, that you don't mind, just in case you get one second hand. The valves are maybe on their way out, so you may have to swap a few valves over or something like that. Just check how much these valves are to replace, that kind of thing. But you may pick up a little bit of a bargain, saying that maybe £800 5 years ago on a bid up, you may get for £200 or £300. And if you have to buy an odd valve or two just to get it back to how it was, it's not going to cost you too much. And you've maybe got more of a decent amp, more of a better amp than this particular kind of Chinese, kind of like a slung together unit. But as that said, it still isn't a bad sounding amplifier. I will keep it for the time being anyway, because like I say, I will get some coupling capacitors at some stage and have a little muck around with them, and who's to say I may not get another set of valves at some stage as well, just to have a little bit more of a tinker when I've got a bit of time and a bit of spare cash for this, because what I'm going to spend on this for one or two items, I can probably go and buy another amplifier for the channel and give my review on that kind of thing. So it's been a bit of fun for me really, I suppose. You know, for anyone out there thinking of getting it, it's okay, it's all right. You just, like I say, you're lacking that top end, you're lacking the bottom end, a little bit muddy at the bottom, top end a bit rolled off and that, but you're kind of like, the vocals are, you know, where this is at, that kind of void in between the people playing the instruments and the singer and etc. Soundstage wasn't as large as I thought it would be for this, but who's to say that another 50 hours on these valves, that may kind of spring out a bit, and if it does, obviously I'll report back at some stage. But yeah, I'll just say have a really good think about it. It's, you know, for some people £300 ain't a lot of money, but for some people it is. If you're really going to spend that maybe you could go and instead get yourself a nice solid state amplifier, a nice turntable, a nice CD player, and you know, a decent set of speakers. For that kind of money put together, you're going to have quite a nice system, a bit of oomph to it, because don't forget this is only about 2-3 watts. It's rated at 6, but you know, 3 or 4 watts maybe I think it gives that max. You're going to get something with a bit more oomph, a bit more like to it, more detail, top end. Solid state wise, obviously you're not going to quite get the valve kind of sound, but you're going to get something you can rock to, you can, you know, have a good listen to, and maybe enjoy a bit better than this. This is for someone I think that's just going to sit back, this particular unit, not have it too loud in a little bedroom or something like that, and just listen to some classical, some jazz, some ballads, that kind of stuff. I think this is maybe more suited to, and I think, you know, if you're doing that, you're going to get some enjoyment out of it, but it is a reasonably high cost for some people, I would have said. Okay, so hopefully that's helped out a little bit. Like I say, check out Skunky Design Electronics, who's helped me do these mods, well, watching her videos anyway. Who's to say that she may not post up some more extra videos on this particular amplifier, some extra mods that we can do, and maybe improve it a little bit more. Anyway, for the time being, I'll say thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.